Hey guys, how's it going? Trying a new camera setup today. I got my iPhone screen streaming directly to the computer, which is pretty cool. I didn't even know that was possible, but it is. If you're curious how I'm doing it, I'm just using QuickTime. You can connect your iPhone to your QuickTime, and it'll give you an option of which if you want to use the iPhone as your video source. So that's pretty neat. So I'm a couple days late on this, but last week we had the high-profile suicides of Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade, obviously, which is clearly very tragic, especially considering both of them had kids, and so that's truly unfortunate. But I think this presents a different picture of suicide than we might be used to. Like for example, I think most of us can think of suicide. We think of a person who's just been down on his luck for a long time, depressed, maybe alienated from his children, can't find a job, hasn't been able to earn a living for a long period of time, maybe addicted to drugs, that kind of thing. I think that's sort of the prototype that we think of when we think of suicide. A person who's just out of options, and life has just sort of drilled them down to a point where they see no point in continuing. There's no way out, right? I know Kate Spade was going through a suicide, but clearly that wouldn't have financially destroyed her. It wouldn't have ruined her life financially or professionally. Obviously, it was a factor in ruining her life emotionally. And Anthony Bourdain, I don't know his entire circumstance, but it's safe to say that his professional life and his finances were not really a problem. I'm guessing he was set for the rest of his life. Obviously, he was, but um, I don't think the reasons they committed suicide were because of circumstances spiraling beyond their control. You see a lot of this in that forest in Japan, where that PewDiePie made that video where he saw all these dead people. Um, I think you see the typical profile of suicide in that forest of suicide over there is like a middle-aged Japanese businessman who can't earn a living. His life has just beaten him down, and he's just not able to cope um, with his circumstances. He's not able to make the circumstances work for him in any way. Forget being very successful, just even being able to earn a living. So I think that's what we normally think of when we think of suicide, or just a drug addict who just can't deal. So, but here we're dealt with a different scenario. From outward appearances, it looks like these two. Sorry, it's a mosquito. It looks like these two were at the top of their careers. Things couldn't have been going any better. So what happens here? I think from what I gather, and from my own personal experience, what I'm seeing is that this sort of suicide happens when people find themselves trapped in roles that no longer suit them. Um, I think we all play roles in society, whether or not we mean to. And some of us have these roles thrust upon us, whereas others strive to attain these roles. We see this in technology all the time. Especially with my clients, I'm constantly dealing with clients who think they're the next Steve Jobs, the next Mark Zuckerberg, uh, you know, wanting to drop out of college. Well, most of them are out of college already, but like wanting to quit their job and start the next Amazon or whatever. They aspire to a role, right? They're trying to achieve a role in society. They all want to be the next Elon Musk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think what happened with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain is that they achieved these roles, and then once they got there, they found that maybe it didn't suit them. Maybe once they've achieved that level of success and notoriety, they're finding that the golden pot isn't at the end of the end of the rainbow, and now they're like, what now? I don't. Where do I go from here? Because um, I think my guess is what happened is that they started to feel trapped in those roles because other people depended on those roles. It was no longer just about them, right? Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. If Anthony Bourdain decides to shut down his entire operation, which I guess he did anyway, but if he did so, the normal way, just said, I'm retiring, I quit. A lot of people who depended on him no longer have a means of earning a living, at least in as it relates to him, right? His shows, I don't watch them, but I'm sure they have dozens, if not hundreds, of people earning good livings off his show. Right? He can't just like check out and go do his own thing, or just go back to being a chef. Maybe I don't know what he wants to do, but those options may not have been available to him. It may not have been a free life as it appears. He's flying all over the world, trying new cuisine from different and exotic countries and meeting all sorts of interesting people and all that stuff. It seems interesting and fascinating, and for a lot of people, I'm sure it is. But after he's been doing it for so long, so many years, that I don't think it really rocked his boat anymore. But he couldn't just stop. Maybe he was under contract, or maybe, I mean, forget even that. Maybe he just, his kids depended on it, right? His kids looked up to him as like, oh, my dad is the rock and roll chef guy. Like, his kids thought that was really cool. Maybe, this is all speculation. I don't know, but my point is that he got trapped into a role, I think, and as a result, he felt trapped. I think the only commonality in all suicides is that everyone feels trapped, no matter what leads to that suicide. So whether or not it be, a person who's just down on his luck and just can't get anything to work out right, that person feels trapped. And then there's the opposite end, the extreme opposite end, Kate Spade, who's fantastically successful, and it seems like she's on top of the world, but she had an image to protect, right? That's why she probably never pursued institutional help. She never checked into a clinic or anything like that. I think her sister reported that she tried to gently urge her into a facility, a professional facility, but she wouldn't do so because it would hurt the brand. It would hurt her brand name. So she was trapped essentially. And then once the divorce starts getting underway, that can't be helpful for her brand either, right? I mean, this is Kate Spade. This is the quintessential successful woman with a family in this country. She has clearly shown that you can have it all as a successful woman in society. Um, Fantastically successful business, beautiful family, beautiful children, and that image is extremely important, I would imagine, to her brand. And once that started falling apart, she felt trapped by that same very image. Her own success became her sort of her prison, right? And they felt trapped. I think that's the circumstances I see happening there. Back when I was living in Connecticut, um, I knew some extraordinarily wealthy people. Some of them are very famous, and some of them, a typical year they would make over $100 million, like that level of wealth, right? Not like $200,000, like $150 million, that kind of thing. So, a lot of these people, I'm not going to say most, that's not the case, but a good percentage of them were very, very unhappy people, very unhappy people, and and I'll tell you the circumstances. How would I even know this? So a lot of these people I tutored in math. This is so back coming right out of college. I was a high school math teacher in Connecticut, and I did a lot of tutoring on the side, and that turned out to be a pretty good way of making side money. So a lot of the people I tutored were the kids of these highly successful, typically network executives or hedge fund managers, the usual stuff, the occasional lawyer, but it's more finance and like high level entertainment. And especially with a lot of the wives, um, there was a lot of just inner turmoil. There was a lot of hostility. I remember, not towards me, but just like general, just sort of anger at the world. Like, parents who just really hated their kids' teachers, that kind of thing. And sometimes I was on the receiving end of that when I was a teacher. Um, uh, I remember one of my friends in Connecticut, I'm not going to name the town, but he was a member of the local police department, and he told me that the most common call he gets is domestic violence. The most common overnight call he would get is domestic violence. He would have to go up to a beautiful house in a beautiful town in Connecticut, and break up a husband beating up his wife. And in all likelihood, these were multimillionaires many times over. right? I mean, can you imagine being that wealthy and still eliciting that level of anger, right? That's there's a disconnect there. There's some sort of incongruity there. I think what's happening is that these people oftentimes found themselves in a role that wasn't suiting them or wasn't working out for whatever reason. Um, I have a little bit of personal experience with this. My dad was a doctor when I was a kid, and he had raised, he had raised me to be what I'm supposed to be, an Asian kid in America, right? So I'm going to get all A's. I'm going to play piano, so I did play piano. I have to go to an Ivy League school. I went to an Ivy League school, all that crap. So like that's the role I was that was imposed upon me. Right? That role was imposed upon me. I didn't have an option because I was too young to make any decisions. So that was the role that was thrust upon me. But my father was also dutifully playing his role as a doctor and the provider of the family, and so that he can earn a lot of money and pay for college and then pay for the house and pay for, all that stuff. And that's exactly what he did. But I remember between the ages of roughly 10 to like 13 or 14, so basically all of my middle school, my dad would just disappear every weekend. So from like Thursday or Friday to Sunday night, he just wouldn't be in the house every single weekend, especially over the winter time. And I don't know if this is exactly what happened, but he told the family, he told my mom that every Friday he flies out to Florida and then he works on his golf game. My dad was obsessed with golf, so it was a very plausible explanation. Like I believed it when I was 10. I was like, what the hell do I know? I guess that's what he likes to do. So he would fly down to Florida and just golf like crazy, and then fly back up and then do his whole doctor's thing in the city. And that went on for like 4 years, right? And the point I'm trying to make is that he was not, something was off there. Something was off about it wasn't, there was an incongruency with what he wanted to do with his free time and his role as the caretaker and provider of the family, right? And that's it didn't lead to a tragic outcome like it did for Anthony Bourdain or Kate Spade, but uh, I noticed, right? It's kind of hard not to notice. Like, where's Dad this weekend? Again, he's in Florida playing golf. Um, it's not like I was I was paying attention in terms of like what does all this mean? Like, why is he doing this, right? And then as I got older, as I grew into adulthood and I became a man with my own business and started doing my own thing, I realized, oh, he didn't like his role. He didn't like his role of being the provider, of being a dutiful husband, of just being basically the workhorse of the family and working in the city 50, 60 hours a week to provide a house and college tuition and all that stuff. And probably, for kids like me who were probably very ungrateful. And, I was a bit of a brat, but, I was a kid. I'm not sorry for that. Like, I was a kid. That's what kids do, right? And so my point is that, now I'm now the same age as when my dad had me, right? So I don't have kids because I know that I would not be happy in that role. And so I've done my role playing for the first 22 years of my life, and I have dutifully satisfied that role. And I earned excellent grades. I kicked the shit out of the SAT. I dominated the AP classes. I went to an Ivy League school. I did fine there, made Dean's List. I'm done with that. I served that role, right? And so by the time I got to my mid 20s, I realized that, um, I remembered what my dad was doing, and I was like, I realized he was not happy in his role. So I decided I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to do what I want to do. Now, there's some silliness here. Like I live like a college kid, right? I mean, I can't show you my apartment, but I just bought Xbox last weekend, and you know what? I'm playing it, and I don't care what people think. And that's, I'll invite people over to play. But I'm doing what I want to do. I am professionally successful. Like I have a handful of clients, and they pay me a fuck ton of money to write software code. I raised a round for Turbo, and I'm in the middle of another raise for another startup. And these are the things I want to do, I choose to do this, and nobody's pushing me into this. My parents don't even understand what I do. They literally don't comprehend what I do. So I'm choosing my role. Now, maybe some of that is also pursuing another role. There's some truth to that. I want to be the next Elon Musk or whatever. That'd be awesome. Or maybe I don't. Maybe one day that'll happen and I'll find out, shit, this was a mistake, right? And then what? And then I'm going to be in their situation. Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. I'm not saying I have that kind of potential. I'm not honestly suggesting that I have the same potential as Elon Musk. I obviously don't. But the point is, I might achieve some level of notoriety that I'm aspiring to, and then find out the other side that it wasn't quite what I hoped for, right? And that, and then, what then, right? And that might be what happened to Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. The point is, I see it everywhere. Everyone plays roles, and the question is, once you achieve those roles, does it suit who you are, who you actually are, right? How congruent is that role with who you actually are, right? Who I actually am is a software programmer. I love to program. I love programming, and so I'm a software engineer. So this role suits me pretty well right now, right? I also like playing Xbox, and guess what? I'm going to do it because nobody is dependent upon me right now. I choose not to have kids. Well, I mean, I don't have a wife, so there's some element of non-choice there. But even if I did have a wife or a girlfriend, we wouldn't have kids right now because it doesn't suit my role. And I've heard from my mom a couple years ago that it's kind of a selfish outlook. Fine by me. Call me selfish then. I mean, here's the bottom line: no one's getting hurt. No one's getting hurt. I mean, what is truly selfish is to have kids and then spend every weekend playing golf instead, right? That's actually selfish. Now, I normally don't get into personal stuff on this channel. That's about as deep as I'll go ever. But this happened. This is exactly what my childhood was growing up. And I don't look back at that with kind of like I don't have negative feelings towards that. It just was my circumstance. Like, Dad's playing golf again. That's what he does every weekend. I guess I'll just go outside and do whatever. It wasn't like I don't look back thinking like, oh, where was he? Like, I wish he was a more involved father. Like that, there's none of that. But that's also not a good thing, right? Like that means there's a lack of a connection there. And whose fault is that? Not my fault, right? So am I going to do it to my child? No, I don't have a kid. That's the reason why I don't have a kid, because I don't want to ever resent my child, right? That what if I have a kid and I'm thinking like, shit, I want to play Xbox this weekend, but I got to go watch his Little League game, right? That's supremely selfish, right? I want to be in a situation where I want to go watch his Little League game. Like I want to be there and I want to coach him and explain to him how to, how to play baseball and, all that stuff, how to steal signals from the catcher and all that nonsense. I want to be in a situation where I want to do that, right? But just to get married and have kids because it's the next role for me. It's graduating to the next role. At my point in life, that's stupid. And if that means I never have a wife and kids, then that means I never have a wife and kids. But here's the one thing I won't be trapped. I'm not trapped. Certainly not trapped now. I can do anything I want to whenever I want to. And that's great. That's great. I have a pretty good fucking life. I love what I do just for pure money. And I love what I do when I'm not making money, right? I live in a great part of New York City, but if I want to move to Los Angeles next month, no one's stopping me. And here's the bottom line: no one's getting hurt. Nobody's getting hurt. There are no kids who have to pay the price. I don't even have a girlfriend who has to question whether or not she wants to move with me or not. And if she decides not to, then there's a broken relationship, right? I had one girlfriend in college. She was out of college. I was a junior, and she had already graduated, and she was in Boston, and she had gotten a job offer in Seattle, and I was like, well, I mean, if you want to take that job, then I can't stop you. Like that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. And then she decided to stay in Boston to maintain our relationship, and then she used that against me. Every time we fought, she used it against me, and which was a lot. We argued a lot. Every time we argued, she used that against me, and that's when I realized, like, I'm not doing this ever again. I'm not doing this ever again. Like, I'm never going to convince anyone to do anything on my behalf. But I never even did that in the first place. I didn't ask her to stay. I would never ask anyone. She chose to stay, and then she proceeded to use that against me in every argument that we had, which was several, right? Um, and so, um, for me, I would never ask anyone to make such a lifelong decision on my regard. But on the flip side, that means I'm never going to make those decisions on anyone else's behalf, even if it means my own parents, right? Because my own mom asks me all the time, like, when are you going to have grandkids? When are you going to get married and have kids, right? And and I know if I do that in the near future, in the next 6, 12, 24 months, I'm forcing myself into a role that doesn't quite suit me right now. And I'm not okay with that for anybody, mom, dad, anybody, right? Because there is too much collateral damage in those decisions. There's a wife, there's her entire family, and then there's whatever kids we have, all because I'm being a shithead, right? And that's not how it's gonna play out. I have more agency in my own life than that. And if that means people think I'm selfish, then I'm okay with that. That's fine. But the point is, I'm not going to satisfy a role imposed upon me. Now, I think that's eventually what happened with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. At first, they attained the roles they desired, and they probably experienced a level of elation that 99.9% of the world will never experience. And they've lived some of the life's highest highs, and you know what? I envy that. But they clearly also ended up in the lowest of lows, obviously, because they took their own life. So they ended up in a role that no longer suited them, and there they felt trapped. And I think that's what happened. Honestly, I think that's really how you have situations where people um, who appear to have achieved the pinnacle of success in this country can still lead to the most tragic result. I personally think that's how that happens. Um, I mean, this is all spec. I don't know Kate Spade. Obviously, I never met Anthony Bourdain. I'm just like everyone else. I'm wondering the same things. How did this happen? Like, how did something like this happen? Um, it's amazing just the female psyche. Not the I'm sorry, not the I don't know why I said female. The human psyche. I apologize. I did not mean to say female psyche. I meant the human psyche. How fragile the human psyche can be. I think I meant to say fragile when when I said female. So please, my apologies if anyone's offended by that. But what amazes me is how fragile the human psyche can be. To give you an example, about 5 or 6 years ago, right when I was moving to the city, I was friendly with this gentleman who used to play in the NBA for about 4 or 5 seasons. You wouldn't recognize his name. He never really got any playing time. He averaged like literally 2 minutes a game. Um, but he played with a lot of superstars like Steve Nash, Carmelo Anthony, the other guy on Phoenix, Amari Stoudemire. So, uh, so one night we were drinking, and I asked him. I said, "Why do some of these guys in the NBA get married when they're like 24, like 26, something like that? Like, why would anyone in the NBA do that? That's just really stupid, right?" Uh, I would imagine the reasons are obvious. And he was like, "You'd be surprised at how weak-minded a lot of these people are. Professional athletes, some of the most finely tuned athletes this world has ever seen." He said, "You'd be surprised at how weak-minded a lot of these people are." He said that some of these guys, when they meet a girl who makes them feel really confident, makes them feel like Superman, they buckle at the knees when the girl tells them what to do, and then they get married. And so, I'm not going to name the players I'm talking about, but just look at some of the guys who were getting married at 25 and 26. And that's essentially who I was asking him about. And that blew me away in terms of his response, like in terms of his reasoning as to why uh, they got married when they did. I'm sorry, I'm distracted. There's a mosquito floating around. I'm just trying to make sure it doesn't land on my face or anything. Um, so the human psyche is very can be very you know pulled in different directions by other people, essentially by external forces. I was no different when I was younger. I think we've all experienced that. Some of the best days of my life when I was really young, like high school, like ninth, 10th grade, or when a certain girl paid me attention. It just I remember when I was in 10th grade over the summer. This one girl was giving me a lot of attention, and it felt like I was walking on clouds. Like I was like, where is this coming from? Like it was such a new experience for me, right? Um, and I could at that time I can imagine her having complete control over my will because I was so like swept up by it, right? Um, Now I think that's just a part of growing up. I think that's just part of experiencing life as an adolescent. But a lot of people don't really evolve past that, right? Now today that would never happen. Today that would never happen. Every now and then, a girl does express interest in me. It's not very often, but it does occasionally happen. Believe it or not. But it doesn't impact me the way it used to. Right? I have a little bit more of a guarded approach now. Um, but the main thing is I don't let it affect my psyche. My confidence doesn't derive from that on any level whatsoever. My confidence derives from my ability to do what I want to do when I want to do it without any reservation, without any compromise. And I can honestly say that's the case today, and it's been the case for a while, and that's it. No, nothing's going to stop that. So I think a lot of people have a hard time reconciling their lack of personal agency um, with with just their overall circumstance. Like Anthony Bourdain was on top of the world. Kate Spade was on top of the world, but she didn't have personal agency. She was still under the devastating power of divorce by what's his name, Spade, Andy Spade, or whatever the husband's name was. You know, something happened to her and she couldn't handle it, right? The circumstances with Bourdain, I don't know well enough. I didn't do enough research, but so I don't want to speak too much on that. But um, I think this is what's happening. And as far as technology is concerned, we see a lot of this. People striving for roles, and right now in my industry, that role is bar none the successful billionaire founder of a hot social networking startup, or some hot like currency trading, cryptocurrency trading startup or whatever. And, everyone wants to be that next guy, right? But even there, you know, it might not be what you want. There was that guy several years back, Aaron Schwartz, I think, who also killed himself. A very successful tech entrepreneur. Um, and then there was that other guy. This was a long time ago. This was like 7 or 8 years ago. His name is Jody Sherman. I'll just Google this. Jody Sherman. He killed himself too a long time ago. It's probably like 2010. Jody Sherman. Oh, 2013. All right, so it's about 5 years ago. So he's a tech entrepreneur who also took his own life. So personally, I think that's what's at play here. Those are the forces at play. And I guess the questions as a tech person, because this is obviously a tech channel, is how do you see yourself within the context of these forces? Right? Are you striving to play a role, right? Or are you doing this because you just love doing this, right? How can you tell? Well, if you have strong impulses to tell everyone about what you're doing because you're trying to, for lack of a better word, show off what you're doing. Like, hey, I got this cool hot startup going, and I'm the CEO of this cool tech startup. If you feel the impulse to tell people over and over these things, you're playing a role. You're playing a role, and I've done this too. I'm guilty of this. But right now, I, I don't tell anybody anything because I'm logistically, I can't. Like, I'm just in my apartment programming all day, every day. It's actually pretty pathetic how much I program. I'm just working on my own shit all the time. I've kind of gotten a little bit off the deep end on this. Like, I'm working too much on like the stuff I want to work on, right? Just all the programming I do. So I can't tell people about it because I physically don't come into contact with people. I haven't been out of my apartment in 2 days. Actually, no, I left today for a cup of coffee, but that's it. Um, so yeah, uh, but I meet a lot of people along the way, especially in meetups, you know who are playing roles or trying to. Some of them are just very bad at it. Um, and I think these are the questions you need to ask yourself: is whether or not that's your motivation, your primary motivation, and if so, um, you know, evaluate evaluate whether or not that's really what you want to do. Um, uh, it might not be as much fun as you think. You might be more trapped at the end of the day than you realize. And ultimately, the one commonality in all this is people were trapped. Kate Spade felt trapped. Anthony Bourdain felt trapped. Right? Jody Sherman was trapped, or at least he felt trapped. Um, so forth and so on. That is the one commonality of probably all suicides, is they felt trapped. So yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching. Hopefully some of this made sense to you. I don't know. I was just kind of just freestyling on this. So, but I do think it makes sense in terms of how this sort of thing happens with such high-profile, highly successful people. But I'd love to hear your opinion. So if you have any thoughts on the matter, leave a comment. Let me know. And I'm curious to know what other people think about this. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.